Okay, Grandpa. How you doing today?
I'm doing good.
You sleep well?
Yes,
You feel rested?
yes.
We just got back from AM Cafe. We had lunch, brunch. So let's jump into some questions. Uh, so a question from Gloria, your sister. Um, the alcoholism that your parents struggled with, how did it affect you as a young adult in your young adult early growing years?
Well, my early years, it was an embarrassment. And we did everything to keep others from knowing that my dad was drinking.
Yeah.
And so when we lived in California, Dad didn't drink every day. In fact, he prided himself with drinking only on the weekends at one point. Uh, but it was in the very beginning a sense of shame and that they had this problem. Mother didn't seem to drink that much in the beginning, and it just became more progressive as days went on.
Yeah.
I felt responsible for my brothers and sisters' safety, and so it affected me in such a way that I constantly was in prayer and also doing everything I could to help them. One of the things I did is when I was in college is that I was making enough to pay my own way and had a few dollars left over. So whenever I had enough that I could send some home, I would send a $25 check
Wow.
to my aunt in California, and Aunt Merle, and I gave her directions to buy groceries for the kids and make sure she opened up everything, because back at that particular level of difficulty, they would have gone to a store and I knew what they did. They would trade it in and get liquor.
They'd return it and get the money.
And get the money, or actually get the liquor. They would just switch it.
Wow.
But anyway, it affected me in the sense that both positive and negative. The positive part was I didn't want to go down that road.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be there, and I refused to. And Jack was even more so. He became almost fanatical about it.
Yeah.
But in my situation, I didn't go off the deep end about it. I just indicated that it was not for me, and I stayed away from it all the way through high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I had friends that drank quite a bit when I was in school, and they would make fun of me because I didn't. And one of the things that happened, I don't know if I should tell you this, but when I made my trip up after I had decided to go into ministry, I went to see some of my friends in school, from high school. And they started teasing me like they always did. And I said, "You don't know anything about my family." And they said, "No, we don't." And I said, "I can drink all three of you under the table." They said, "No, you can't." But I did, and I could. And I walked away, but that was the last time I ever tasted alcohol.
Wow.
And I don't look with pride at that. I knew that my family metabolism was such that they could we used to call it hold your liquor.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's something I haven't told anyone.
Wow.
Except my brother Jack was with me, and he was very disappointed.
Wow, Grandpa. I was just about to say that. I mean, I thought you had never had alcohol in your life.
Yeah, that we had a case of beer and we drank the whole case.
Wow.
I mean, like 24 bottles.
Wow.
And afterwards, I thought that was stupid.
Yeah.
What a stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it was a moment of rebellion, looking at the life I'm leaving or what, but that's happened.
Wow.
As far as my my dad was concerned, he was kind of an alcoholic that was sad. He was not violent like some men, and when he would drink, he would just get real quiet and sleepy, and he would eventually just lay down and go to sleep.
Yeah.
And at first, Mom did not join him, if I remember right, and that would have been in the early years in California and the earliest years in Oregon.
Yeah.
But it affected me in the sense that I knew the consequence of willful disobedience to God through this. So that's the positive side.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that it helped me to work with people who had alcohol problems.
Yeah.
Because I worked with Dad through so many of those moments, and so did my brother Jack.
Wow.
So that's pretty much how it affected me. It made me serious. I was much more serious about life than maybe I would have been. I would have been more fun-loving probably.
At an earlier age, you
Yes.
kind of had to get serious.
Yeah.
Man.
But I was living a serious life when I was under 12 years old.
So, your mother stayed at home. She was a stay-at-home mother, took care of all the children, and your dad worked many different jobs when you guys lived in different places.
Yes.
What was the percentage of the check going to alcohol, do you think?
I really wouldn't be able to tell you. All I know is that he provided for his family 9 out of 10 times. And so Dad saw it a responsibility even when he had drinking issues. And as years went by, he became less able to control it.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened was, I don't know if Gloria remembers this, but I don't know whether she got him the job or somebody got him a job at an aircraft.
Mm.
And so he was very prideful about the fact that he didn't drink during the week.
Yeah.
But he was becoming the Monday became a hard day, and Friday became a hard day.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he decided, well, I'll just fill my thermos with something to drink.
Huh.
So he did, and one Monday or Friday, I don't know which day, they could smell alcohol on him. They called him in and they checked his thermos, and it was, I don't know whether it was wine or beer or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, they fired him. He lost his job over it.
Wow.
Now today they wouldn't do that, but back in that day, they did.
Where was this when he had his aircraft job?
It was down in Long Beach area.
Wow. How old was he at the time? What year was that, you think? You were gone.
I was gone. I was in college. That he would have been 50s.
I think this is a good segue into so what happened when your parents stopped drinking? Can you
Okay.
We'll probably get to that in your life story, but I kind of want to
Okay, well, this
unpack it now?
This is the story I was told because I wasn't here.
Okay.
This is what my aunt told me, Aunt Merle, and she said that she got a phone call from Mom, and Mom had been drinking, so she was pretty well alcohol impaired.
Yeah.
And she said, something terrible has happened, please help me. And so my aunt rushed over, and she said there was Dad laying on the floor, and he was vomiting blood, and it was on the walls and on the floor and everywhere. And they called the ambulance and got him to the hospital. So the surgeons were just leaving, the ones that worked in the area where he had. His stomach had ulcer that he had in his stomach had perforated, and that was causing him to bleed out.
Oh, wow.
So the emergency worked him in according to my aunt and saved his life. He just barely survived.
Whoa.
And so he was laying on the hospital bed in much sober and much pain. And my Aunt Merle went to the surgeon and I said to him, he's a drinking man. And the surgeon had just said something very odd to her. He said, when I was working on his stomach, he said, I had all this white powder all over his stomach. He said I couldn't figure out what it was. And it was bicarbonate of soda that Dad was using to subdue the acid in his stomach. So he'd already had stomach surgery prior to this.
Wow.
If I remember right, sometimes it gets confusing.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, she said, would you talk to him? And the doctor said, sure. So he walked in, and Dad was obviously in lots of pain. And doctor said, by the way, I understand you're a drinking man. And Dad, okay, yeah. He said, well, let me tell you what happened when you got here. He said, we'd been doing surgery for hours, probably 6-8 hours. And we were going home. We were on our way home when they rushed you in. He said, you had about 5 minutes because you had lost about 2/3 of your blood. And we gave you transfusions and stopped the bleeding, etc. And he said, no question in my mind, your drinking is attributed to this. He said, if I ever see you come in again, I'll keep walking.
Wow.
He said, you must stop. So according to my aunt, Mom came in to visit Dad, and she was cold sober. It's because she was scared to death that she's going to lose him. And, she loved him dearly. And Dad said, according to my aunt, and I don't know whether she was in the room or whatever, but he said, Alice, I've got to stop. I can't drink anymore. And he said, but I can't stop if you don't stop. So we both have to stop. Will you help me? And Mom said yes. And when he got out of the hospital, they never drank again, either one.
Wow.
That's a story I was told by my aunt.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so like I said, I wasn't there, so I didn't get it, firsthand.
Yeah.
But she's pretty accurate.
Man.
And
how old was your dad at that time?
I would say he was in his mid-50s.
Yeah. Wow.
And Dad and Mom was still in her 30s, 20s, 30s.
Man. Well, that's awesome that they stopped,
Yeah, now my brother Bob did develop a drinking problem at one point. But the rest of us, all 6, they may have used some alcohol, but none of us became involved in it.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's kind of a sickness, Addiction is a sickness.
Yeah. Well, you do get addicted to it. It's a willful thing, and that's why AA works. Dad went to AA a couple times.
Yeah.
He said, I don't like to go back there. They're all drunks.
Yeah, that probably wasn't very helpful, was it?
Yeah. In his case, it was, he wasn't ready. He just wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
As years have gone by, I think that part of his drinking may have come from the failed first marriage,
Yeah.
which I really didn't know much about at that point.
Huh. Man. Well, on a more lighthearted note, we have another question from Gloria. And she wanted to know, when your dad sold the house and sold the land in Marcola, and when they drove down to California, she wanted to know if she thinks her dad bought a new car, and she wants to know what make it was. She thinks it was a Chrysler. What was it?
It was a 1948 Chrysler.
48.
Yes.
Was it new or old?
It was used.
Used.
Beautiful car. Really nice car.
Wow.
And Dad was drinking at that point. And the way he sold the farm, he was in a bar, and somebody offered him $5,000 for the house and land.
Wow.
And he took it. Said, I want to sell, I want to get out. Well, right after he sold it, the guy next door said, I wish you'd have come to me. I'd have paid you $10,000 for it. So once again, I learned the lesson of my father. One of the great lessons was, Dad had a heart of gold. He would share with anyone, help anybody, but his business acumen was very small.
Hmm.
He never really looked out for himself. He looked out for his family, and he was a good dad, and he loved them. He loved all us kids. And when the time had come later on, when they were talking about taking the children away from the family because of the drinking, the thing that weighed in my direction was that they had love, and I couldn't take that away from them.
Yeah.
And they were all, the family was all kind of depending on my point of view or my view on things.
Yeah.
But those are hard days. They were hard. Drinking and alcohol and drugs has such a negative effect on children that I've never forgotten it. I've always worked with the alcoholics, and I've always worked with the children of alcoholics.
Yeah.
And helped them to understand that I understand.
That as a pastor counseling, huh?
Yeah.
A
lot of times. And one of the gifts that God gave me was the gift of being able to intervene with people in difficult situations.
Yeah.
But anyway, they had a 1948 Chrysler. I can still see the grill.
Yeah.
Great big wide grill on it. And it was a beautiful car.
She also remembers the story falling off your handlebars on your bike. Can you recount that story?
Yes, and that happened when she was real little. This was, if I remember right, this was the bicycle Dad got somebody left in a garage or something where he was working, and he came home and gave it to me, but didn't have any tires on it. And so I got so I could stop that thing on a dime
So
without any tires.
Explain the no tires thing to someone my age.
Okay,
I've never seen one of those.
Okay, what it was the rims. It had rims on it, and so you had the pedals and the chain and everything, so you could make it go.
Yeah.
But we didn't have any money to buy tires, and you have to remember this was war years, going into you couldn't really get tires.
They took the rubber for the war.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, if it's that period of time that she remembers, and I do remember riding her on the high handlebars, and we would, everybody wanted to ride, and so I could beat anybody in town who had real nice bikes. I could go faster than they could.
Really?
But stopping was a little problem, because when you slammed on, it just skidded. And it was an English bike that had a wooden insert inside of the rim.
Oh.
And as I said, the biggest issue I had was I'd be driving along, and if sparks would start a little bit of smoke coming out of the wood, and I'd have to let the wheels cool off.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And so what happened? She said she got a big gash in her leg.
No, that wasn't on the bike.
Oh,
That happened, if I remember right.
okay.
If I remember right, what happened was, I think she tripped. We were going to the Black Market Joe's market,
Yeah.
and she was with me, and I was keeping an eye on her. And if I remember right, she kind of caught her foot on a wire, and like a little piece of baling wire,
Yeah.
and tripped, and fell. And when she fell on this. I remember it was a jar. It was a cream jar, like a woman would use for facial cream.
Okay.
But it had a very funny break to it, and it had like a point on one side, and it went right into her leg.
Whoa.
And it was a bad cut. It was really bad.
Whoa.
Now, I remember hurrying home with her,
Yeah.
and it's one of the few times we went to the doctor. That's one thing in those days. You didn't go to the doctor
Yeah.
unless it was serious. And
Wow.
so the only other time was when I got bit by a dog. But in this case, they had to stitch it up. And if I remember right, she still has the scar on her leg.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Man.
But I don't think it was on the bicycle. I think we were just walking and she tripped.
Oh. Man. Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump back into your life story.
Okay.
We ended, you had just won the whole ping pong tournament at your school.
Oh,
What year is this? Where are we at right now?
okay. That would have been probably my sophomore year.
Sophomore year. And you
Yeah.
had just met, what was the Japanese man's name?
Hideo Yoshi.
Hideo Yoshi.
And in fact, I had him come and speak at the church. It had to be 57.
Really?
So it was, could have been my junior year. And I invited him to come and preach.
And this is after you guys graduated?
No, this is before.
Oh, during college?
Yeah, during college.
Okay.
So he put on he had a real nice suit. And I always thought to myself, he looked like a little boy because he was so tiny.
Yeah.
He was only about 4'11", 4'12",
Uh-huh.
at the most. And he might have been 4'6" or 4'7". So anyway, we went up, and he was going to share about Japan and the mission work there and everything. So I introduced him and sat down, and he went up and stood behind the pulpit. Well, the pulpit's pretty high. It was like up to my chest.
Yeah.
It was built by one of your grandma's relatives' husband.
Mm-hmm.
Nudicate was his name. But anyway, it was dead silence because nobody could see him. He was standing behind the pulpit, and nobody could see him.
What?
Yeah, it was taller than he was. And so we just kind of dead silence. And I thought, well, what am I going to do here? And he stepped out from behind the pulpit and he said, "Please do not judge my people by me. I'm a little shorter than most." and he was an excellent speaker.
Oh.
And so he shared the work in Japan. On the day that he went home, I was the one who took him to the dormitory where we were living.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Hideo, it's a strange thing. We've just met, you from across the world and me from across the country." And I said, "We've become friends and we are brothers in the Lord." And I said, "This is a marvelous thing." I said, "We probably will never see each other again."
Yeah.
I said, "But I think it's ironic and almost outstandingly meaningful that we crossed paths." And I have never seen him again.
Wow. You heard anything about him?
Yes, he became a principal of a school in Japan,
Wow.
in Osaka, And I think he sent 2 of his children to the school to graduate also.
Amazing.
So it's just a small world.
Yeah.
But we had a typical Japanese meal for him. And one of our classmates was raised in Japan and with a missionary family. And so we had sukiyaki cooked in the middle of the table and all this kind of stuff.
Wow. That's awesome.
As his going away present.
That's really cool.
We actually went down and bought condiments at different places in town to be able to prepare the meal.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And that was when you graduated, when he was leaving.
He was leaving. He had brought in some credits from a college in Japan.
I see. So he graduated a little bit early.
Yeah.
Before you. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
And so back to my preaching started by what we call fill-in, which whenever somebody was on a vacation, if you were available, and I wasn't at first, I was in the music field.
Yeah.
But when I made myself available, I dropped out of the music group. So I preached in Indiana one time at one church, and I preached in Ohio a couple times, and preached in Hamersville, which is on the road to your great-grandmother's farm.
Yeah.
Where Tom Frisney was the preacher, as well as a teacher at school.
Huh.
And we have to understand that in those days, many of the professors had to carry 2 jobs because they weren't paid very much. And but they were excellent teachers, and you learned a great deal.
So Frisney was a preacher as well.
Yes.
Wow. And that's the
He had 6 kids.
6 kids.
Yeah.
That was your Greek professor, right?
Yeah.
The one that you learned a lot from?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
We became friends, and over the years, and he was a sponsor of my freshman class.
Wow.
So he was in charge of the class, and every time something needed to be done, he would come to me, and he put me in front of the Bible bowl, and I said, "This is not my thing, Tom. I'm really not a artist."
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, I want you to do this." Then we're going to do the annual for the school.
Yeah.
I want you to be on the annual committee. I said, "I don't have time for this." He said, No, I want you to be part of it. And so if you were to look at my annual, I have a picture of me there with the crew, working with the annual group, getting pictures and stuff like that.
So what is that? What is the annual group?
It would be like every year you put out what they call an annual, which was the year graduating. So each year you put one out for that graduating class.
Okay.
And it was our graduating class.
Oh.
Annual.
Wow. So he pushed you to do a lot of things then.
Oh, yes.
Those tend to be the best teachers.
Yeah, he was good. He when I worked on my master's, I needed to stay on campus, but I didn't have any money to rent it. And he's in charge of the dorm, and he said, "Well, we got an extra bed in there. Don't worry about it." So he gave me a place to stay while I wrote my master's.
Wow.
And Jack Cottrell was in the lower bunk, as he was finishing up some work and teaching.
And we've got Jack Cottrell's book right here, The Faith Once for All. That was Grandpa's classmate.
Yeah.
Bible Doctrine for Today. That's really cool. So how many people were in your, just sophomore class? How many are we talking total?
My freshman class was about 300.
Well, that's
sizable. And then it dropped to about 150.
Whoa.
The sophomore year.
Yeah.
And the graduating class, I think, was 35.
By the end of it, it was 10%.
Oh, yeah, and you just kept losing.
Okay, and it was Bible college only, right?
Yeah.
So so the people that dropped out were just like, this is not for me, and they just left.
A lot of that, or they just ran out of money.
Oh.
And so it was a big cost. It was $3.10 a unit to start with. And then when I graduated the first time, it was $3.40 or $3.60 per unit.
Wow.
And today it would be many hundreds.
Yeah. I want to open up a inflation calculator and see what that is today. Give me a second. So you said it was
When I graduated, it was $3.45, I think it was.
per unit.
Yeah.
So what was your average class load?
Oh, mine was always large. It was 16 to 18 hours.
Wow. So that was like 6 classes, 6 classes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'm connecting to your internet right now. So, man, 30 when you were done, was that the average of just about every class? You know, it just had this huge...
We had the largest freshman class when I went. Since that time, the school is, I think the total then was about 550.
Wow.
And right now the school is running over 1,000. So it has expanded.
Okay. It was $3.45.
Yeah.
$3.
And that would have been the 50s.
1950. You got an exact year?
Yeah, that would be 1955.
1955. Here we go. Ready? $3.45 is it's $32 today.
Okay, that's about right.
So $3.45 is equal to almost $33 today. So $33 per unit, right? Per hour. That's not bad.
No.
That's not bad. We pay a couple $100 a unit now.
Yeah.
Colleges.
And part of that has to do with, I believe, with underwriting. Underwriting the schools have caused the schools to raise their tuition.
Yeah.
And I don't think they would be paying those big salaries to their professors that they pay. You wouldn't believe what some of the professors were making. They were making less than preachers.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think Jack Cottrell ever got paid what he was worth.
Man.
And he got paid probably more than anybody else.
Really?
And and he was just a dedicated Christian. He was, according to what I was told, he was the number one high school graduate in the state of Kentucky when he graduated.
What?
Yeah, he was top notch.
Goodness.
Yeah, he was 4-point everything.
So what did Jack Cottrell go on to do?
He became first of all, he graduated from Cincinnati the year I did.
Yeah.
In 1959. And then he wanted to go on to graduate school because he wanted to teach. Well, our school was not accredited. So none of the graduate schools would accept our graduates. That was really strange. But anyway, they said, well, what you need to do is get a generalized degree. So he went over to UC, University of Cincinnati, got a bachelor's degree there after he got one with us. Then he transferred to Westminster Theological Seminary, got his master's, and then transferred from there to Princeton and got his doctorate.
Princeton University, wow.
Yes, right. And so when they'd already told him that they would have him on staff when he got finished with his schooling. So he came back, and Lewis Foster was the head of the department and was a PhD graduate of Harvard. And so he's the one I wrote my thesis under. But anyway, they wanted him to develop their theology department. And so Jack told me, he says, so I came in, he said, well, what do you want me to do? He said, you decide.
Wow.
You sit down and design what we need to do in theology. And that's what came out of all of this.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's brilliant. And he's sick right now, so
Still alive. That's awesome.
Yeah, to keep him in our prayers.
Yeah, we'll do.
But anyway,
so sophomore, junior year.
okay, that was when things actually I got in my sophomore year. I had second year Greek. It wasn't much fun, but I got through that with Jack or with Tom. He taught both of them, and the difference is that the first year was Attic Greek, which is ancient Greek.
Oh.
The second year was Koine Greek, which was New Testament Greek. So I got a real broad view of the Greek language.
Yeah.
And so after graduation, my home preacher said, well, I'd like to see you go to Lincoln and get your graduate degree. And I said, I am not going to go to another place and establish myself. I got a job.
Yeah.
So I decided not to. And then I said, but I do want to go on. So I started taking classes, graduate classes. I minored in pastoral counseling and majored in theology. And so I took, actually it was a 2-year program. It took me a little longer. I was beginning to wear out. But I got a Bachelor of Theology the next year, which was a 1-year degree. And then I did all the resident work for the Master of Theology at the school. And about that time, I was grabbed to become the founding pastor of Fairfield Church of Christ in Fairfield, Ohio. And so I quit my job. And that, again, is another whole story. It has to do with what we went through in that early year of establishing the church. But anyway, I got to the 5 years at the church and only had 1 year to finish the thesis. You got 5 years and you had to finish it the 5th year, or you didn't get it. And so I took off my vacation of 3 weeks, and I did all the research in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And every week I would go up to the country and Betty would type up rough draft.
I don't understand. And I did all the research in 3 weeks and every week.
Sorry about that.
Apple Watch.
Yeah.
Hold on. Where are we in your collegiate career? I'm confused.
Okay.
Right now.
We're there. I got, I just was finishing up my classwork when the pulpit search committee for the new church approached me.
Okay, so this is undergraduate still.
No, this is graduate.
This is graduate.
Yeah.
Okay.
All I had was to finish out my fall semester, and I'm finished with all the classwork.
Okay.
And so I told them, I said, I have classwork to finish. They said, that's not a problem. You go ahead and finish that, and we just want to start at February the 2nd, which was like 2 months away.
Wow.
And they all interviewed me and whatever, and Les LeMay had a lot to do with that. I in fact have a print-up of my life that comes from that, where they gave it out to the Cincinnati Evangelizing Association is the one that approached me.
Wow.
And so I quit my job. Which was the bank.
The bank.
I was working at the bank.
Okay.
And I still had I had moved out of the dorm because my roommate had married, and I said, I'm not going to break in a new one. And so I had an apartment where I lived. But anyway, and I had met your grandmother, and we had started dating. And that was prior to starting the new church.
Oh, okay.
So that would be, we were dating in the fall of 1962.
Tell me how you met Grandma.
Well, I was taking a class in team teaching a class as a graduate student in abnormal psych. And I knew everybody in school by this time. I knew everybody by name, knew them all.
Yeah.
And I was not interested in any of the girls. I'd burn out. And so I looked out over the group and I saw your grandmother there, and I said, "Oh, well, who is she? I don't know her. I've never seen her before." And so I was just curious mostly. And there was a girl that was from Canada that I had been thinking about asking out on a date, but I never did get around to that. But anyway, so we have a break, a 3-hour class. So it's an hour and a half each period. And the drinking fountain was down in the floor area.
Uh-huh.
And so we all went down to get a drink of water. And your grandmother came up and got a drink. And I thought, I'm going to find out who she is. So I asked her who she was. And she said, I'm Elizabeth Betty Emmons. I said, you any relation to Charlie Emmons? She says, yeah, he's my brother. Oh, okay. And I said, well, why are you here? She said, well, he talked me into taking piano from his Professor Barry, and I figured I'd pick up a couple classes as I just graduated from nurses training. And the rest is history. We dated, and now we started the church on February the 3rd, and
Wow.
I asked her to marry me, and on June the 7th of the same year, we got married.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Good place to stop.
yeah, okay.
Until next time.